All right, I'm not going to delay you guys too much longer. Our next presenter is an amazing person. He just stepped down from space. No, I'm just kidding. So, Jared Isaacman, just to let you guys know, he's the CEO of Shift4. They're a leader in integrated payment processing solutions. He's an accomplished pilot, astronaut, over 7,000 flight hours, all of that.
Good words, dude.
If you have not seen the Inspiration 4 on Netflix, space mission, you've got to see that. These are 4 regular humans, not NASA trained astronauts that went to outer space, circumvented the globe, and it's an amazing thing. So we're going to bring up Jared Isaacman.
Thank you, bro.
So first off, thank you for being here in person, not up in space. Quick question. So I reached out to you a year ago. I mean, you're talking a year ago. We didn't even know when Polaris Dawn was going to go. You gave me the caveat. But why did you respond? What did you even make of it? I mean, it came in your X DMs and it's typically like block or mute or like what was going through your mind? Especially it was like Tesla or Silicon Valley.
I certainly thought I would have been back from space by then. Never would have thought we would actually have. I thought I was going to be speaking to all of you from quarantine up until rather recently. But no, I know this is a group that wakes up every day and gets excited about the future. I was just honored to be able to that you even thought of me to come out and chat.
Well, again, thank you for being here. Let's just start from the beginning. I mean, it was funny how, we were talking in the back and we are just saying you're not just an astronaut. You're literally a CEO of Shift4. I mean, and all the other endeavors, you're flying jets over space, over Starbase before launches. I mean, we actually even talked to you about flying some jets over this. That was even being considered. So we were going to pull out all the stops, but let's just start from the beginning. Talk to us a little bit about, how where were you born and where you were raised.
So I grew up in central New Jersey, and kind of as I started my business when I was 16, and as we were, central New Jersey, there's not a lot going on. You either gotta move east towards New York if you want to keep growing, or you gotta move west towards Pennsylvania. We chose the west route, and pretty much been in Pennsylvania the last 10 years.
How did you start your first business? Like, what inspired you to start your first business at such a young age? Because clearly you're doing multiple things and radically different things. I mean, I've seen some of the stuff that you're doing in your jets. I mean, like that to going up Inspiration 4. I mean, you're doing a lot. So tell us a little bit about your first business and what gave you the inspiration for that.
Yeah. So probably worth pointing out, my first business is still my day job today. It's went from that cool teenage basement startup. It's a pretty decent sized public company today. But what was my inspiration for it? 2 things. One, hated high school, and
most of us do.
Yeah, couldn't wait to get out of that. I've just I have a lot of older brothers and sisters. So my eldest brother's 15 years older than me. Then my sister is 13 years older, and then my other brother's 8 years older. So they were out, independent, enjoying life while I was in high school, having to raise my hand to use the bathroom or something. So that was primarily why I needed to start a company. And second, it was all pizza and beer money. But yeah, I certainly never anticipated it would grow to be the business it is today. I mean, Shift4 is pretty cool. I mean, look, in space, in terms of cool businesses, space is certainly number one. And then we also had a fighter jet business where we flew as professional bad guys for the U.S. military. That's cool too. But in terms of payments, I mean, it is pretty awesome. We process like $250 billion in payment volume every year for all the fun places you'd ever want to go, like Disney World, Six Flags, all the stadiums, restaurants, and hotels, like good in-venue experiences where you go out with people. So, it's probably somewhere in the top 5 or so cool endeavors to work on in business.
Yeah, can you share that story behind how you actually founded Shift4 Payments, and what are some of the entrepreneurial challenges you face in starting up a company from the ground up?
Yeah. This is a cool picture. This is when we moved out of the basement into our first office. So this was like in 2001 or so. I worked for another company. So I left high school when I was 16. I worked for another payments company and kind of learned the industry a little bit and just all the opportunities for improvement. And then I didn't like my boss, so I quit my job there and went and started what was to become Shift4. And look, it had all the right ingredients. There's opportunity. There were real problems to solve or solutions that could be made better. It's supported by good solid business plan. So it had a lot of the right ingredients. I'd say the biggest challenge was just we were like a total underdog. I mean, we started the company in New Jersey. We never had a Series A, B, C, or D. We were never a Silicon Valley darling. So, I mean, even today, we're a $7 billion public company, and there are competitors that perform far less than we do, but we're kind of coddled by VCs and therefore have some sort of a greater following. But we were forged totally different. I mean, we were profitable in 2004. If we wanted to hire people, it was out of our own cash flows. We wanted to build the product as our own cash flows. And I think it's made us such a different company, such a stronger business. And we've been able to grow even through the most challenging of economic times over the last 25 years. So look, I mean, I think that is like one of the biggest challenges, which is, availability of capital to make a business happen. But at the same time, as challenging as it was during those early years, trying to convince people to, support a teenage endeavor, it was those challenges that ultimately forged us into the company we are today. And I'm actually really thankful for it in hindsight.
Yeah, and that looks like this is your IPO picture. Is that right?
Yeah, so June 5th, 2020. So we're a payments company with the majority of our customers is restaurants, hotels, and stadiums, and we IPO in the middle of a 100-year pandemic.
Who would have predicted?
Pretty crazy times. But we were actually the first company back in the New York Stock Exchange, since they closed and sent everyone home during the heart of the pandemic. And yeah, I mean, scary time in the world for sure when the government tells people you can't go out to eat and you can't go stay in hotels and travel and such, and that was the majority of our customers. But we grew through it and we learned a lot from it, and it's just continued to make us a better business today.
Congrats on that, by the way. Especially, starting a company and during or going IPO and all that other stuff is like, and doing it on your own, using your own cash flows and becoming profitable. I mean, that's an incredible success to you. So congrats on that.
A huge team, always a huge team to make it possible. So,
what sparked your interest in aviation, flying jets? Can you share how you got started?
Yeah, sure. So this goes back to being a kid, and thankfully my parents chose to entertain me by putting me in front of the television. So Top Gun, The Right Stuff, Space Camp. That was great. I was the kindergarten kid who wanted to be an astronaut. I told my kindergarten teacher I wanted to be an astronaut, and she was very, very supportive. I checked out books from the library in elementary school, early space shuttle photos. But I built my first computer to play flight simulators. It was a passion since I was a kid. I thought as good as it's ever going to get is being a pilot. You have to. It's 1 in a million to ever go to space. So aviation's been awesome. It's been a total parallel career for me. I woke up one day at 19 on my keyboard again, and I was burning myself out as a teenager. I'm like, I need something more in my life, and I just picked up that childhood passion and just never stopped flying. And it's been, like I said, it's like a whole career in its own right at this point.
Do you have a favorite type of jet? If so, what makes it special to you?
Oh, that's a good question. I've been lucky to fly a lot of really, really cool airplanes. Like I said, we were professional bad guys for the military for about 10 years. It's a company called Draken, so got to fly all sorts of foreign fighter jets in some really cool environments. But actually, the picture you see on the plane, at least or on the screen, that last one, that's an A4N Skyhawk, and that's a really special one. I flew that in Germany. It's the A4 is just an awesome airplane in general. So much history to it. From Vietnam as a ground attack airplane, but then they stripped it down and really lightened it up and made it an awesome adversary airplane. So if you saw Top Gun, that was what Jester was flying. In that particular version, the N model has a motor with 20% more thrust. So it's actually can have 1-to-1 thrust to weight at about half internal fuel, which makes it a pretty maneuverable airplane. So I'd say that was probably one of my favorite. And I also get to fly a MiG-29, which is it's a 4th gen fighter that can pull 9 Gs and go twice the speed of sound. So it's never a bad day when you can do that.
Hey, what's your call sign?
Rook.
Nice. What is there a story behind that?
There's always a story behind it.
Can you share it? Is the question.
There's the public-facing story, and then there's the truth.
Don't tell us which one it is. Just tell us the story. Whatever you feel.
Getting your call sign, there's a whole naming ceremony behind it, and it usually involves a lot of drinking and storytelling, and then you don't even remember how you got the call sign the next day.
What's the story behind this?
Oh, so I think like a lot of things in life, I've kind of always been seeking out the next challenge and adventure, and this was actually taken in 2011. We were flying air shows. This was called the Black Diamond Jet Team at the time, and was awesome. Got to fly with some really extraordinary pilots and learn from them, and like a lot of things, you have the adventure side, but then you try and make it about something bigger than yourself. So we actually we dedicated all our performances to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. Just as we wear the St. Jude patch on our flight suits today, we wore the Make-A-Wish ones then, and bring out wish families to all the shows. It was really cool. It was a very I think up until the last 4 years when human space flights entered my life, this was some of the best experience of my life back then.
Yeah, a follow-up question to that is, what's the most memorable flight experience so far, and why?
That's a good question. I've been lucky in a lot of things, and my aviation career is certainly one of them. I mean, I've flown around the world on world record flights. I've flown air shows. I've flown with some amazing pilots. I've gotten to fly with my kids, my daughters, up in the front seat and teaching them how to fly. But I think probably most special he was a really close friend of mine. We flew air shows together. He was our chief pilot at Drock, and a guy named Dale Snort Snodgrass. And actually, it's only a couple days ago was the anniversary of his death, which was in a plane crash. But highest time F-14 pilot in the country. I mean, considered one of the greatest fighter pilots of the last 50 years. There's a famous picture on the internet, actually, of an F-14 in a knife edge pass in front of an aircraft carrier. Does that ring a bell to anyone? Seen it? Yeah, he's got a great story on YouTube if you ever go in it. People always thought that he got in trouble for that, but that was just actually his routine. And super inspiring individual. I think the time I got to share with him in the sky, and then being part of his memorial flight were probably one of the most special moments in flying.
Yeah, that's touching. Yeah. Let's shift gears. Let's talk about your space exploration, your other part-time job, right?
Or full-time, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, so obviously Inspiration 4, a lot of us watched it on Netflix. How many people here has watched Inspiration 4 on Netflix? Yeah? All right. Yeah. Amazing story. First question, what motivated you to lead Inspiration 4, and what were your primary goals for this historic all-civilian spaceflight?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I never thought that any of this would even be remotely possible. It actually goes back to 2008-9 when I was doing these world record flights, and there's actually Dr. Peter Diamandis reached out, and he had seen the flights and said, "I think you might be interested in what's coming here in the commercial space industry." And I was like, that's awesome. That there's actually a real possibility that, people might go to space outside of being one of the lucky few at NASA or a government agency. So he invited me to Kazakhstan in 2008 see a Soyuz launch. Actually, it was Richard Garriott who was going up. And that was the first time I got an opportunity to meet some of the early pioneers from the commercial space industry. And I just followed up periodically knocking on the door whenever you're ready. Believe it or not, it was actually back in 2009 when I had the first conversation about maybe being a pilot on one of the first Dragon flights. And so then it was just late 2020. And something completely unrelated to human spaceflight was talking to SpaceX and said, whenever you're ready, I'm still interested. And then I got an email like 3 hours after hanging up on the phone. And before even NASA's Crew 1 flight had launched, Inspiration 4 was born, which is amazing. Again, that just speaks to Elon and SpaceX and the forward thinking to say just so much confidence in returning human spaceflight capability to America that we can start thinking about what's next. And that became Inspiration 4. And never would have thought that would have had such an opportunity, but when I got it, I knew it was going to be special and that it would come with a lot of responsibility that we just had to get it right. We set out from the start to inspire people. It was right in the name, not just about, what the world could look like in space and that future we all want to live in, but the things we could accomplish here on Earth. And I don't know, just getting people just thinking about all sorts of things. And it's really represented well in the crew, Haley and Hope and Chris with generosity and Cyan, Dr. Proctor on just perseverance and prosperity and never giving up on our dream. It just, we just had a lot of really good goals that came together on that one, and it worked out well.
Tell us a little bit about how Inspiration 4 has, what was accomplished in that flight, how it impacted even this one that you're getting ready to do.
Yeah, I care about the whole mission, everything from beginning to end, and we set out to accomplish a lot on that one, and we did, and we got it right. So much so that I didn't think we'd go back. I thought we set the bar really high, and that we had set out to inspire a lot of people, to raise a lot of funds for St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, to show that it could be done, for all the other exciting missions to follow. And it was really emotional when we came back, and the only thing we came up short on was that $200 million fundraising goal for St. Jude, and then Elon tweeted and said he's in for $50 million. Put us over the top. And,
congrats.
It was a real emotional moment. We'd just come back. It'd only been a few hours since splashdown when that came. So anyway, I thought that was good enough. That all the other missions that would come would think about more than just going into space, which can be a very controversial topic when we have so many problems here at home, that we can balance both and just inspire the next generation as to what's possible. And I think we did okay at that. And now it's great. There are so many good commercial missions. Axiom's going up. They're bringing other astronauts from all over the world into space. You have other commercial providers that are motivated to unlock that last great frontier as well. It's pretty cool.
Tell us a little bit of, so by day, tech CEO, by day, you're obviously doing, stuff as an astronaut, but tell us about the training process for Inspiration 4 mission and how you prepared mentally and physically for space travel.
Sure. And I'd say it's very similar to what we do with Polaris Dawn, and it's actually somewhat of a formula that's applied to all the NASA missions and other commercial missions as well. There's a heavy academic portion to it, so you can understand how all the systems work in Dragon and in Falcon. You learn all the procedures, the nominal ones for when everything is is working correctly, the contingencies, and then the real emergencies, and that's all a building block approach. And it's led through a series of intense simulations. It kind of culminates with a joint campaign where you work alongside launch control and mission control to kind of collectively test your knowledge. And that's the same for any NASA Dragon crew or any Axiom crew. There's other things too. There's flight physiology. You go through centrifuge. You go through hyperbaric chamber, hypercapnia training. Then there's space medicine because for all the glamour of human spaceflight. The reality is, once you get there, it's not so glamorous. More than 50% of people have space adaptation syndrome, which can present like motion sickness. So you need to know how to deal with that. But then there's a laundry list of other things that go wrong. You have water survival training in case you don't necessarily come down next to where the recovery ship is in a contingency case. And then we supplemented. We flew fighter jets because that's a great, high consequence environment for, where you can work on crew resource management under, dynamic conditions, high G forces. You go up and climb mountains, wilderness survival training because you do want to get comfortable being uncomfortable. It's an awesome journey. I said it before, like my experiences at SpaceX and everything associated with training for these missions is just as awesome as going and flying them itself.
So it seems like there's there's overlap. I mean, it's insane that the training, from obviously flying jets, speaks to going to space. Stepping a little bit into Inspiration 4, what was like the most memorable moment? And how has that potentially even changed, your perspective on life in the universe?
Look, it was an unbelievable experience, and it's hard to kind of just pick any one. I will tell you, I think one of the things that stands out the most to me, and it wasn't as impactful at the time. And let me tell you, so there was a moment on our mission where Haley was in the cupola and she was holding a picture of herself as a 10-year-old girl when she was battling cancer with no hair, and meanwhile her hair was floating around. It's a really awesome picture. Cyan was painting and working on poetry, and Chris was playing the ukulele, and I was thinking in that moment, I was like, we didn't take enough science and research. We're not maximizing this unique opportunity we were given. And it wasn't until after I came back that I realized how wrong I was at that moment. In fact, this is what it was all about. This was people being themselves in space. This is what SpaceX is trying to achieve by opening up, this last frontier for everyone. And I got a front row seat of it, and it was really special. Yeah.
Amazing.
So you touched on that, the crew selection process, and in the Netflix documentary, each one of the characters has their own story. You have your own story, but can you talk about how the selection process worked for Inspiration 4, and were there specific qualities you were looking for, and then how did that final team come together?
I mean, it was totally random. I didn't know anyone in that. Now there's some health and psychological screening. There is certain criteria to go through that has an influence in this selection, but I didn't know any of my crewmates in that. I mean, to say for such a random process, the stars truly aligned because they're incredible. I mean, they're incredible human beings and they're great astronauts. I mean, they did an awesome job. But I knew the only thing I knew when Inspiration 4 was born is that these were not going to be friends of mine. I mean, it didn't take a lot to figure out what the negative spin and narrative would be on this, right? Rich people going into space while the world's burning around us. You just had to be thoughtful about it. You had to do the right thing. I was going to bring people that were going to be, again, just awesome human beings and very inspiring in their own right, all with, incredible stories that could teach people. Just incredibly lucky that for as random as it was to find somebody that, a frontline healthcare worker that I knew was going to come from St. Jude. I didn't know it was going to be such an extraordinary human being and a great astronaut, our medical officer, Haley Arsenault. But, she was great. Or Dr. Cyan Proctor, who literally did everything she could have done in life to be a NASA astronaut. I mean, checked all the boxes: a geoscientist, professor, Civil Air Patrol pilot, scuba diver, analog astronaut. I mean, she's one of those people that actually locks themselves in like a shipping container for 6 months to simulate being on another planet. And she was a semi-finalist in the 2009 NASA astronaut class and didn't make it and never gave up on her dream and ultimately became the first black female pilot of a spacecraft. Chris Zambrowski, a space camp counselor as a kid, motivating kids to look up and dream about the stars, joined the Air Force, worked on their missile programs, and all he did was make a donation to St. Jude, and a 1 in a million chance, and gets picked. It was a random process, and it ultimately yielded some extraordinary individuals and really close friends.
Yeah, amazing stories. So what the morale is that anyone who contributes to St. Jude's can be chosen?
That's
always possible.
You hinted on the scientific component of your mission, right? Can you talk about what the research and experiments that were conducted in that mission, and what were the impacts on future space missions?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I'm all for this world where space is open for everyone, and you can go up and do whatever you want up there, and exercise creativity, explore, build, construct. There's just really unlimited possibilities. We've only just begun to scratch the surface. But until that time, space is still expensive. You're still extraordinarily lucky to even be in that position. You have to maximize the most of it. So, Inspiration 4, we were committed to using as much of our time to science and research. Polaris, for sure. I mean, we probably had half a dozen science and research experiments on Inspiration 4. We have close to 40 on Polaris Dawn. But looking back on Inspiration 4, what were probably some of the most impactful ones? We were the first 4 astronauts to contribute to a new database that houses, everything: saliva, blood, urine. I mean, ultrasound. I mean, you skin samples before and after. I mean, we made plenty of good contributions to science, and. But this is really interesting because when it was just government astronauts, there's other forces at play here. First, there's just general privacy and, with health data considerations for, government employees. Also, I've no doubt every NASA astronaut absolutely wants to help and make their contributions as well. But there's also been some historic considerations of, if I report this, does this have an impact on my next mission? And with commercial astronaut program, you never think you've got another shot at this whole thing. So you're giving it all. And now there's this database that has our information, and it has Axiom information in it now. And it also has data that's coming from even some NASA astronauts and, of course, Polaris. And this is cool because now science and researchers will be able to access this database and pull information from various phases of flight and see how that applies to their hypotheses or whatever they're investigating right now. We also tested new techniques like a new ultrasound device that's USB powered. It's a butterfly device. It's super cool. It was novel on that mission. Now it's totally standard. We have 2 of them on Polaris Dawn. It has like a real medical treatment benefit, but also it's great for gathering information on the fluid shifts that happen in space. That's just a sampling of what we did on I-4.
How do you think Inspiration 4 has influenced the future of commercial space travel and space tourism? What do you see its lasting legacy being?
Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't. I'd hope to think it just set some standard of how things should be done again in a thoughtful way. Like, we can't hit the pause button in life. Like, I know there are so many problems that we have here at home that we have to solve, but a lot of those solutions come from continuing to make progress towards tomorrow. And I think we struck a good balance of, recognizing there are real problems here on Earth, and we happen to pick one that we think is vitally important in St. Jude. I mean, I'm a total believer in the SpaceX vision and that we will be a multiplanetary species, but we should conquer things like childhood cancer along the way. And that became a huge focus of the mission, and that it shouldn't be this rich guy type narrative all the time. You should bring people that otherwise would not have maybe the opportunity to go into space so that they can come back and tell their story and inspire a whole new generation to either look to the skies or something else in their life. So I don't know. I hope we hit the right balance of that and set a good tone for future missions.
So let's obviously kind of transition into obviously what's upcoming. But first off, talk to us a little bit about, how did you first get connected with SpaceX and Elon Musk? And can you share the story behind your initial interactions with SpaceX and the collaboration?
Sure. So the first, and I'm guarantee Elon doesn't remember. I did meet him. I mean, we both came from a payments world. I'm still in it, so I think we were on some news interview at close to the same time. So there's that, and then in '08, after the world record flights, when Dr. Diamandis reached out, I had a chance to meet him again there and learn what SpaceX was doing. It wasn't until Inspiration 4 that we had a chance to connect again, and at that point, he kind of just helped. Part the seas, if you will. Initially, some of the concepts of what we wanted to do in terms of going past the space station, going past Hubble, there was some pushback of like, why do we need to do this on the first mission? Why can't we play it safe? And it's like, well, we've been going to the space station for a long time, and for as much amazing science is taking place there, that's what people have been seeing for 20 years, and they need to see something different. To open the aperture a bit. So we'd like to go farther. And Elon definitely helped with that. It was actually at an interview in passing. He was like, just let me know if you run into any problems. And the next thing you know, we went to 600 kilometers. It worked out great. And then I don't think we chatted much until we started talking about what the Polaris program could be. And obviously, he shaped the objectives for the first mission.
So can you share with everyone here, what is it like working with Elon? Can you describe any memorable experiences or exchanges with him that you've had?
And I should say, I can count on two hands my interactions with him. I mean, that's the thing about SpaceX is you've got 14,000 of some of the brightest minds, most talented people. I mean, I've told you guys in the back, it's just like a chain reaction of awesomeness. Like they just keep cranking out amazing things. So the people every day, I mean, even at the entry level to the managers and directors are all highly motivated to achieve extraordinary things, and that's who I get to work with, and it's super cool. But every time I have interacted with him, the thoughts that just went through my mind is that this guy is literally thinking about solving the world's problems, and I should try and take up as little of his time as possible.
I think that's most people's thoughts. What inspired you to initiate and participate in the Polaris program? I mean, you did Inspiration 4. Like, why this?
Going to Starbase, hands down. So it was actually the summer before Inspiration 4 launched. So we were getting ready, and I went to Starbase for the first time, and I've described it. It's like a religious experience. I was like, wow, this is where the world changes, And I've always admired, Elon's world-changing objectives, set outrageous goals, and even if you miss, the results still alter like humankind's trajectory. And what I looked at with SpaceX or with Starbase was like this is a privately funded like Manhattan Project level endeavor. Things that would normally take multiple governments and a large portion of your budget to even make remotely possible, and he can do it and his team in a private endeavor. And when I saw Starbase, I was like, I felt like it was really possible. Like we're gonna get to Mars in my lifetime, and then we got together and talked about everything it would take to go from where we are today to Starship being operational, and there's things we need to do. We need new spacesuits. If we're going to have hundreds, thousands of people in space someday, they're going to probably need to leave the safety of their vehicle or habitat to explore or build or repair. And the $400 million 40-year-old spacesuits today probably aren't going to cut it. So let's build those and test them in an EVA. Let's go farther than anyone's gone in the last 50 years. Let's leverage new communication technology like Starlink over lasers, because the handful of ground stations and TDRS satellites now aren't very young, and they're heavily taxed. So that got me excited. It was different than Inspiration 4, which showed that it could be done, to something that was really developmental to build and do things that hadn't been done before. And how could you not want to be part of it?
Can you talk about maybe you mentioned key objectives and something that you admire about Elon. Can you talk about some of the key objectives about this mission and how it differs from Inspiration 4?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is, as I mentioned before. I mean, we have three primary objectives. First, it'll be a new altitude record, the highest anyone's flown in Earth orbit. So we aim to go to 1,400 kilometers, which is inside the inner portion of the Van Allen radiation belt. And there's a couple things for that. One, there's a lot of science and research experiments. Well, first, you're not getting to the moon or Mars unless you fly through the Van Allen belts. And we've only done that a handful of times, and it was more than 50 years ago. So if we get to Mars, we'd love it if people are able to come back alive and talk about it. And so I think there's a lot we stand to gain from that. Vehicle architecture, you can make vehicles very hardened for radiation. That comes at a mass penalty, or you can take approach like Dragon with triple redundant architecture and rely on redundancies to make your way through it. So we'll learn from that. Again, learn on the science and research side, and then we'll get out of that environment, because our 7 orbits, in the Van Allen radiation belt, and predominantly the one that goes through the South Atlantic anomaly, is a 3-month radiation equivalent on the space station. So you don't want to be there long. You want to get back down, and then we'll move on to the next phase, which is our EVA. So we'll vent the vehicle down to vacuum. So all 4 of us will be pressurized in our suits. 2 of us will go outside the vehicle. We'll learn as much as we can about the suits and operations, and then we'll go back inside, pressurize it, and bring that data home to inform the next iteration of the suits. We'll test out Starlink over laser communication. And again, this is really important. I mean, when Inspiration 4 flew, it was the first time humans were in space in the history of human spaceflight, and they weren't the top priority from a national asset perspective. So we had about 80% comm coverage. And it makes sense, because the International Space Station and the astronauts on there should be the top priority. And it wasn't a big deal at all. We knew about it, and we were super well trained. But that was only 14 people in orbit at one time. And a single Starship could potentially put 100 people in orbit, and they've got 2 factories making lots of Starships. So we're going to need other communication infrastructure besides the ground stations and TDRS satellites. So I think that's what we aim to demonstrate with the Starlink test. I think it'll be we'll use that as an opportunity to send I hope a worthwhile message back home, and then we have 5 days of science and research to get through.
What are some of the biggest challenges that you're having to either prepare for or tackle and work through as you guys have prepared for this over the past months and even in the coming weeks?
I think the suits were probably, I mean, everything that goes into making a mission like Polaris Dawn possible takes an army of engineers at SpaceX. There are so many engineering challenges. Even communicating over laser links. The awesome footage we saw of Starship leveraging Starlink is using its traditional communication method. We'll aim to do it over laser links, which, if you have 2 objects going 17,500 miles an hour communicating over a beam of light, even a small thruster firing from a Dragon can break those links. So that's an engineering challenge in its own right. It's certainly not just hitting the on button on the router. But I think building the spacesuits, I mean, there's a reason why we haven't had new suits in 40 years and why they're so expensive. I mean, what looks like a piece of clothing becomes very rigid the moment it's pressurized. And it is your mini spaceship at that point. And everything between you and the vacuum of space. So SpaceX had to do a lot of work over the last 2 years, which is lightning fast, to build an EVA suit. It's got to have redundant life support capabilities, protection from micrometeorites, radiation, the sun's glare. It's got to be mobile. You got to be able to use your fingers, which is very hard. The joints in it. You're breathing 100% oxygen, so there's ESD and fire considerations, and there's avionics running through it. It's a lot of work, and the team has just done an awesome job. We're really thrilled to be able to demonstrate it.
Can we talk about maybe any lessons learned from Inspiration 4 and how you're applying those to the Polaris program?
Lessons learned from Inspiration 4. I mean, we tried to follow a similar playbook. All the ways we supplemented training. I think just knowing that, having kind of been there, it's you have a plan. I think this is like the Mike Tyson until you get punched in the face thing. And there is no perfect mission, right? Especially when you know that the odds say 50% of the crew members are going to have, space adaptation syndrome. And that was exactly the case with us, too. And when you do, your timeline, which is planned down to the minute, goes to hell. And it means, everybody is kind of a utility player. They're picking up their work plus others. And so I think just knowing that that's how the odds played out on Inspiration 4, preparing for it, that it'll likely be the case with us, and we still have to get through everything is just a consideration. And like I said, we planned for it. So,
what would you say long-term, what's the long-term vision for Polaris program, and how does that fit into the broader goals of human space exploration?
Well, look, Starship is the future for human space exploration. A fully reusable launch vehicle, rapidly reusable, with 2 factories, they'll probably make more, cranking these things out. This is what truly alters humankind's trajectory. This is what allows us to conquer low Earth orbit and experiment, to figure out what that space economy is, so we even know why we need lots of people in space, because it sounds great, but it does come with risk, and we already learned that half the people get sick. So what is the reason we need lots of people up there? We haven't figured out that space economy, whether it's a new form of energy or 3D printing organs or asteroid mining or something of that effect. So we need starships and the low cost associated with them to even just figure that out and figure out what that space economy is. But it's going to return us to the moon. It's going to take us to Mars. It's going to allow us to explore our solar system and maybe someday, unlock the mysteries of our universe, figure out the answers to questions we've been thinking about for some time. So Starship changes everything. It's an unbelievable endeavor. It's still, to me, unfathomable that it's essentially a privately funded endeavor. The other side of the argument out there about the subsidies is just insane. The government's paying a service. This is a privately funded endeavor to change humankind's trajectory. And we are lucky as hell that our last mission gets to be the first crewed flight of Starship. So, to me, Polaris is going to test a lot of things along the way. It's going to, when we're done with this program, we'll have lots of awesome spacesuits out there. They'll be low cost. They can make thousands of them, and you'll have the 737 of human spaceflight, proven with the crew, which will be Starship.
How would you say, I think a lot of times things can get overlooked. What do you like, and more importantly, not everyone's talking about, the fact that you're literally flying jets over Starbase when the Starship launch is happening. Our government's not doing that. The fact that you're giving the nod, what do you want people to, why does the general public need to be aware of the Polaris program and what you guys are doing?
Oh, look, Polaris program, we're just lucky to be here. I'm happy to be here. We get to be a fly on the wall for all the history that SpaceX is making around us. So, I think that what we try and contribute to the broader SpaceX vision is really pale in comparison to the bigger goal, which is there will be armadas of starships someday. They will be very low cost, and they will finally make us a true spacefaring civilization. And who knows what we stand to learn along the way. So, look, the tension is rightfully should be with the SpaceX team and the thousands of people there, like I said, that have this chain reaction of awesomeness. And we're just lucky to have front row seats.
So thank you, Jared, for coming. Thank you to Polaris program, Shift for making today happen, for being here in person. Could you just stand, Jared, you and Kelvin? I'm going to take a photo on top here of just you and the audience. Right here. But if you guys could all stand. Thank you again, Jared, for coming. All right, 1, 2, 3. And then we'll just do one last thing. If everyone wants to just shout X Takeover. What's up, everyone? Where are we at? X Takeover! Let's go, Jared. Thank you for your time today. Thank you, Polaris program.